Tell me why. Okay. No, I'm
Ain't nothing but a heart.
Tell me why. That's staying in the video.
It doesn't matter that they kept us apart.
Brother, sister, we look out for each other.
It doesn't matter that finding the truth feels impossible.
We're all done with fairy tales.
The only thing that matters is you're my brother.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Point in Progress. I am here today with my good friend, that Mario Rivera, and we are talking about all things Dontnod. Mario, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well because this is actually going to be fun. I just finished finally one of these games, and I reviewed one of these games. So this is actually going to be a fun time. So I'm very excited.
Absolutely. Just to start us off, if you don't know, I'm Sly. I'm a huge Dontnod fan. I'm obviously going to be coming to this conversation very biased. I'm very positive on their games. They have some of my favorite games, and I just really enjoy the universes they make. And so, that's where I'm coming from it. I know you tend to be kind of iffy on some of their games, pretty positive on other of their games. So where are you at right now, Mario, with Dontnod in general?
It's funny because I think the first Dontnod game I played was like more of their action adventure games. During the PlayStation 3 era, they had a game called Remember Me, I believe is what it was called. And I remember just sort of being like lukewarm on it. It wasn't until I think Life is Strange came out, and Life is Strange was like right in the same mood of like the same feeling how I was enjoying the Walking Dead series with The Walking Dead season 1 and 2 and even 3 at that time. And Life is Strange just came at that right perfect time. It was even before I got really heavily into Seattle and Oregon culture via my my love for a very specific show. So definitely was a good tee up for what eventually I think would lead us to the game that we're going to be talking about today, obviously, and then even me eventually reviewing a game, which was awesome because I was so gung-ho to do it. So I'm sort of like in the middle with them. But every time they come out, I'm excited for when they have a new release.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so to start off our conversation today, we're going to be talking about Tell Me Why, which is their second most recent release following the story of two twins. Obviously, this conversation is going to be full spoilers. All of the spoilers for all three chapters. Just put that out there now.
You had your time. It's on Game Pass. Pause this, watch it, play it, whatever, but still.
Yeah, go play it on Game Pass. You just finished the game today. Is that correct?
I did just finish Tell Me Why for the first time, yeah.
All right. I have played it. Oh, somebody just asked me this the other day. I've played through it fully twice, and I'm in the middle of a third playthrough that I'm going through with one of my friends. So we're taking it chapter by chapter, and they're playing, and I'm just, they're shepherding the experience. So obviously, I very much love this game. But Mario, will you just give us like a quick rundown on like what is this game about?
Yes, broad strokes of the game. Well, at the very beginning of the game, you are led to assume that, I believe, the mother of two twins, one both Allison and one I will refer to as Tyler, that the mother is attacking Tyler or attempting to possibly kill Tyler. And something happens where the mom dies and Tyler takes the fall for it, goes away to a sort of like, I'm not completely sure what fireweed actually is, but it's sort of like juvie like center. But ultimately, it takes place years later where they're sort of like trying to reconnect back when they're later in their later teenage years, or actually going into college and sort of like the mid-teens. And you're basically learning the journey as when Tyler comes back to town, back to the old place, reminiscing and meeting back with all the older people and all those mixed feelings of what happened to the past, as well as the mixed feelings of what is happening and who Tyler is, who Allison is at this moment, as well as everything that's going on with their mother and also the people that it, encompasses. I hope that's the best way I can elegantly describe is like what the game generally is about. It is a Dontnod game. It has where other characters have special abilities and they use those special abilities to guide them along their story. And in this case, I believe it is Allison and Tyler have a sort of hearing where basically they can hear each other's thoughts. They can speak each other. It's like a two-way radio. And that they
twin telepathy,
which is pretty genius, which I feel like is something that I've had in like other medium, but it was never like to this explicit, where they always had like think each other's thoughts, but at the same time they are also, while they're going back to their home estate or where their mother used to own, they're remembering things as they go along. And I love the effect of how they do it because it's very much a bokeh like camera effect. Like you like zooming into like a light at night and you see sort of like those like shiny reflectors, like it looks really cool. And they are
absolutely.
And on top of that, on top of everything that I just said, there's also sort of this wonderful fairy tale thing that's happened, this motif with the fact that the mother used to tell them stories and create stories for them. And they're sort of like going on this adventure together in a way that to try and just uncover all these secrets. And boy, do they. There's definitely some deep secrets. But I think generally that is what is. Tell me why. And I adore this game. I adore a majority of the characters that I thought I wasn't going to like. I actually end up really liking, especially towards the end, and decisions that were made that are tough but are understandable, but then also decisions that are just raw and I feel so bad for so many people on this small little town. And yeah, I adored every second of it. This game ended up being on the game of my on my top 10 game of the year. But I didn't finish 3 because I was still in the middle of so many games that were coming out at the time. But I knew by episode 2 that I was like, this is fantastic. I knew that this had to be talked about and had to be talked about on my list. So finally getting up to now to like finish that story and see where that resolution was, I'm actually very happy that, in my opinion, I think they stuck the landing. What are your thoughts on this game?
I absolutely love this game. As a trans person, this is the first time I've seen, this is the first time I've seen a trans character in a game, basically. There's been other trans characters in games, and they've usually on the fringes, on the outsides, easily missable, easily skippable type characters. And for Dontnod to say, hey, we're gonna make half of our main character duo a prominent trans character and take such time to put in so many details that are so authentic to that, specifically a trans masculine perspective. It just was so heartwarming and just meant so much to me as a person, just to be able to see a character who looks like me and has similar experiences to me. I've never really seen that in a game before. And so that is, a huge part of why I love this game. But I also just really fell in love with the storytelling, the interweaving narratives between, the fairy tales and the mystery of what actually happened. And I'm gonna be real up front. This is my favorite game of all time at this point in my life. I love this game so much. Just because of all of the things it does to really show characters in the most positive light while still expressing the fact that everyone is human and everyone can be deeply flawed, but still, have the sense of positivity as, a core component of their characters. I just think they do so much good with the character narratives throughout this entire game.
Yeah, for sure. I when it comes to sort of Tyler, because Tyler's the first character I think that we're introduced to after the main like opening of the game. Tyler's the one that meets up with Allison, and then you experience his journey through coming home. And it wasn't, and I felt like at that moment that I was more attached to Tyler. It wasn't until obviously I think till mid chapter 2, but then for sure in chapter 3 when you're now beginning as Allison. Oh no, I'm misremembering that, aren't I? It's been so long. But even so, I feel like there's more emphasis on Tyler, but you do begin as Allison, if I'm not mistaken. But
yeah, so the first scene is in Allison's bedroom.
That's right.
Her
Which
getting
is
ready.
weird in the third episode, going all the way through it. So I felt like my attachment though was still with Tyler and Tyler all the way through, especially in episode 2. But when I came to the end, I think I finally fully came around to Allison, primarily as later that she was sort of having this fervor, this sort of pain, and it blows up at one moment, and you have to take a moment and breathe. That I found her character, how I understood her more. But yeah, absolutely. There's just so many different things in the game that I thought was so elegantly beautiful, especially when it comes to the weaving of the story between the story that they're telling, but also the story of the fairy tale and how it can relate to everyone in that town. The bear being, if I'm not mistaken, is like reflective of Sam of some aspects, or some of those elements are reflective of other people and their traits, which then leads that later in the third chapter that was so heartbreaking. And yeah, so generally I just want to say fantastic game, probably one of the best experience I've had in a sort of choose your own adventure style, even down to I think the last choice that you're given I think is actually very impactful depending on the way that you go. I definitely was very happy with what my choice was, and I applaud anyone to give this a chance. It's, if you want a well-told story that I don't think panders to anybody, I think it's just super clear and cut, and this is what it is, and this is who these people are, and this is people that I definitely ran across in my lifetime. I definitely think that this is something that is super wonderful is the best way to describe it. But
I have a feeling we're going to be able to gush about the story for a long time.
Yes.
But before we get to that, I just want to start with talking about the game mechanics in this game.
Yeah, sure.
So, every Dontnod game has that one like core game mechanic that makes it so special to the story. And you have this like, I don't know, I just always call it twin telepathy. Sure. I grew up with a lot of twins, and it's just something that you notice they can kind of intuit what each other's thinking at the time, but making it manifest as this like physical representation of like reliving their thoughts and their memories, and being able to communicate like that. What were your thoughts on how that works as a game mechanic?
I think that as a general game mechanic, when it happens, there are times where I was happy the fact that it was both triggering both good and bad memories. It wasn't just one thing. It could be a double-edged sword, and the characters fought that too. They sort of like, do you want to relive do you really want this? And they're like, yeah, I need this closure. I need that. So the fact that it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't, and for those characters, I think that's what made it actually interesting. And I think that's what helped compel the stories to grow, especially once you sort of start bridging the relationship between each other and trying to get them to go either together or apart. That was, I thought, was a key thing that I really, really enjoyed about it. Especially, and I also love that these two characters just have a language with each other. And if I'm not mistaken, it's, I think, clearly shown that they kind of turned that off while they were separated from each other. So there was that absolute distance, and it isn't until they're back together that they start bringing that up, which is what I thought was fairly interesting. There's even moments later where you're afraid that they're might going to turn off entirely. Oh, actually, there's a moment specifically later where a character's like, God, why are you ghosting me right now? In like my head telepathy. I thought that was so funny and so poignant, especially where the characters were at that moment. So yeah, no, I think the general mechanic I think is there, especially when it revolves around the story and these memories and how both characters can are both, you know, sees the story in two different ways. One person sees the actions of others in this way, and some people see it this way. And then you're sort of deciding on what you believe is the true, you know, true way. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. It just, whatever is your truth, right? It's whatever your story is your story. So I think that was actually what I thought was fairly interesting.
I really loved how they used the mechanic in this game specifically.
Yeah.
Looking at, you know, the Life is Strange's, and later when we talk about Twin Mirror, how they use the game mechanics in those stories, I feel is very different here.
Yeah.
And tell me why.
Yeah.
And seeing, you know, the breakdown of each chapter, how the mechanic grows with you, and it's not just kind of one stagnant ability, I thought was so interesting. Where you get, you know, the first chapter, you're like, oh, we're reliving these memories together. You know, you see the kids running around and you like re-experience those things, and they're reminded of, you know, their childhood. And then you get into chapter 2 and you start saying, oh, you know, each character remembers the scene a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And you get that sort of dissonance, and you have to think about, okay, what do I want to choose as the player to be their truth? Do I want to agree with Tyler here, or do I want to agree with Allison? And then you have to really think about, you know, what does this mean for their relationship, how they connect, you know, if it's going to bring them closer together or farther apart, like you said. And then, you know, in that third chapter, how like deeply it affects them depending on the choices you made. I just think mechanically how the story is presented to you through the 3 chapters was really powerful, with that growth of their powers as they kind of reconnect and get to know each other better again.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely, I think in terms of the power usage in all the Dontnod games, this is definitely the one that sticks out as part of the characters and makes the characters stronger, as opposed to say like, you know, Life is Strange. The first one, it just rewind time. It's only affecting really Max. It's affecting everyone, but it's as a character, it's only affecting Max, because no one else knows that it's happening. But in terms of this, it is between the bond of these two, and it's the bond that you're building with Tyler and Allison. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. All right.
Now I kind of just want to go chapter by chapter and talk about the story and what your thoughts are and your feelings.
Yeah.
As I was playing this as it released, and it released last August, and it was every week for 3 weeks. So every like
MCU
night on
it.
Thursday night, yeah. So every Thursday night I would get home from work. I had ignored my phone all day. I just, you know, got off work, I sat down and I played this a chapter. And I was taking notes as I was doing it. I haven't read these since playing the game for the first time. And so I have my notes up, and I just, some of the quotes I have written down here are just giving me life. The first thing I wrote was, oh my gosh, Tyler has the same haircut as me. At the time, I literally had Tyler's haircut.
That's awesome.
And like, what first struck me about this story, as you were talking about, you know, we kind of feel more connected with Tyler from how they're presenting it initially. And I so felt like he was like such a stereotypical trans guy in the best way possible. Just like the little things, like if you have a chest and you're trying to conceal it, one of the biggest tricks you do is you wear like a shirt and then like a flannel or like an open jacket over it.
Huh.
you know, like his costume.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like it's just like the little details. The always having like the keys in the back pocket. Like the little details that like remind me so much of like people I know in my life. Just like I don't know. That just instantly struck me in that first chapter. And you know, going back to the small town and dealing with people who are like, who is this?
Yeah, when they go back to like the market for the first time, and they're just like, oh, Tyler.
Oh, your brother?
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen you in forever. Clearly, yeah, that was interesting.
So, what was your initial impressions of Sam? Being
yes,
Sam's
yes.
the neighbor who kind of
Yeah, well, I was
hovers.
I was afraid that I was afraid that he was going to be one of those like very derogatory characters that will just come in and just say the wrong thing, always, never learn, never adapt. And luckily, later in the during his time, he does sort of like address Tyler in the proper way and continuously grows, I think, as a person, or at least you start learning more about why he is the way that he is. You know, I've been around people like Sam that are sort of stationed in life and not really growing and sort of like in their own shit. But it is interesting that the way that he comes around the first time. But by the time, you know, you just see him the last time that you see him, he is just sort of just this sad guy that just passes out on his couch. But my first interaction was just like, and it was sweet that he was so close to Marianne to begin with, even though I love the line later. I think Allison confronts him, and then she's like, you know, are you my father? And then he's like,
yeah,
in
like, chapter 2.
Yeah.
I wish.
Yeah, I wish. I wish. I'm like, oh man. But yeah, overall, I'm glad that he wasn't that. No real characters are that from what I can remember. There are certain, like there's one officer that I don't think I necessarily liked because of the way he talks. But then again, I can't remember if that's him speaking or if that's Allison's trauma coming out, because Allison at that point is like saying things, like manifesting things that are not true, that are happening because of her guilt. And so that's why I'm like, did he actually say that, or does it? But no one overall, you start learning everyone's motivation, and it's somewhat plausible, except for one person. We'll get to that person later.
Oh no, I can't wait. So yeah, one of my favorite things about this game that instantly made me think, oh, these people care.
Yes.
Is the treatment of Sam.
Yes.
Sam comes in and he's kind of like a bumbling, you know, doesn't know how to interact, super awkward. And, you know, he has that line where he's like, you have to forgive me, like I'm old. And Tyler instantly was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And having Tyler stand up for himself was just like such a beautiful way to handle that, and saying like, yeah, like you're not going to be perfect, but that doesn't mean I have to tolerate that.
Yeah.
And then you see Sam instantly be like, okay, I'm going to change, and you see him get better and better. And I think Sam is honestly like one of the best characters in that regards, is that you see such a clear shift in who he is throughout. And he's not, you know, he's not one of the like major characters.
No,
but he still gets that growth.
Yeah, he sprinkles bringing out, but I do love that. Like, if I'm not mistaken, his parallel in the fictional like fairy story is the bear, right?
Yes,
which would make
I believe so.
Which is interesting because when you think of a bear, he's sort of like scary, like interior, but he's just so cuddly for the most part. Like every character seems to have sort of like their own like connection to, and I'm wondering who the hag is. I have to think about that one. I'm very curious about who there's a few of them that I'm like, oh, I gotta connect them later.
I remember I like went through and connected who all the characters are.
Yeah,
that was so long ago.
But yeah, it's been a while. But but yeah, I want to go straight. I want to talk about this character straight away. What are your thoughts on Michael?
Okay, yeah, go for it. I love Michael.
I love Michael so much.
I love him so much.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously I am not indigenous. And so I know they put a lot of time and care into researching, that culture in that area and being as respectful and portraying it as accurately as possible, having a bunch of consultants. I don't live in Alaska. I can't really speak to that sort of aspect of his character, but like knowing that they cared so much and put so much time into fleshing out his story like that is great. But he's just so cute
It's just so
and
wonderful.
so sweet. And we'll get to choices we made with him later.
I'll
But
say,
I
I think
love him.
at first I thought, I was like, is he the love interest to Allison? And I'm like, oh, no, he's just a cool dude. And then and then later on, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So on the topic of Allison,
Yes.
at the end of the third chapter, depending on what ending you pick, I don't know if this is in the opposite ending to what I picked.
Okay.
You mentioned she does roller derby, so I'm pretty sure Allison's a lesbian. I'm just putting that out there.
I mean, you could. I mean, there's never really an real true indication, right? I mean, other than the roller derby.
Yeah,
thing.
it's left pretty ambiguous. But after the roller derby line, I was like, wait, are you a lesbian? But I love Allison. I love Michael. I love their friendship.
Yes.
And, getting to see their banter and how close they are. And, you get to see through Michael how much Allison really cares about Tyler, from how he talks about how Allison talks about Tyler. And I think that's just like the sweetest thing. And then, later when he's a little bit flirty, I'm just like, my heart.
Let's get full into it. Let's get full spoilers.
Full into it.
Yeah. So this is when I fell in love with the game. Chapter 2, you go back to the store and Allison's doing something I don't even remember. I think she's working her shift. And Tyler goes in the back with Michael. And then they just start playing these like kid games with each other and start like throwing stuff at each other and playing hide and seek. And then I mean, for me, I made sure we kissed. And
Absolutely.
I was flirting hard and he was flirting hard. And I was like, I'm going to make this happen. I believe it. I believed in it at this moment. I'm like, this is perfect. This is the way that I want these people to interact with each other. And I believe in their relationship and I wanted it to happen. I was so desperate for it. And then, yes, getting into then later for chapter 3, when you're doing the fishing, by the way, I caught all 3 fish. It was very easy.
Nice.
It wasn't hard. But
Proud of
I
you.
will say the one thing I noticed is that, damn, I didn't know those chairs exist with the like little circle to put the anyways. I was like, that's cool. But then, yeah, of course I made the move there. And I was like, absolutely. There was a part in the choices that I thought like maybe Michael wasn't going to show up there if I didn't choose it. And I don't know if that's true or not, because there was a part where Michael goes to talk to Allison. I don't even remember. Oh, he was where was he? Where were they? How does he meet up with her?
They were outside the store.
They're outside the store. Okay. Either way, but yeah,
you go fishing with him regardless.
You go regardless. Okay.
He's much more platonic if you don't kiss him.
I don't like that. No.
Very friendly. It's very friendly. And that's one of the things I love about the dialogue options in this game is that it's not like he's being like super over the top flirty if you're not flirty back.
Yeah.
If you're not flirty, it's just like a kind of like, maybe. No, cool, we're cool. Just friends, pals. Exactly, yeah. Yes, 100%. I think they did that really well.
Did you so did you go the romantic route with him?
Oh yeah.
So did you go inside the house?
Yeah. I wanted them to fuck.
Did you go inside the house at the end? Well, I don't. So which ending did you get? Did you show up as a Tyler or did you show up as Allison?
I did the one where they left, not where Allison stayed.
Oh, got it. Wait. Who closed the door at the end?
I don't remember. I just know all of them go to all of them move, and one of them, Allison, stays with the house and doesn't sell it.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. I haven't done that one. Okay, cool. So the one I did was the house is at, you know what? Yeah, I think they've all moved. So basically, the house is all cleared out, and then there's that computer. And then if you read the email, it's clear as day that they're in a relationship. They've been at least in a relationship for 6 months, and it's like perfect. Make me whatever that meal he was making. So I was so happy about that. There's some other great information that you find in the trash, which I thought was funny. But yeah, 100%. I think my favorite relationship in video games right now is still going to be between Tyler and Michael. I just loved every second of it, and I just thought it was earned and totally deliberate. For sure.
I absolutely love that. One thing I totally forgot to mention when we were talking about Sam, to completely go on a totally different direction. Sure. But so I was super negative on Sam at first in the first chapter. I was like, fuck this dude. And then chapter 2, the scene where he gives Tyler a pocket knife, I was just like, every trans guy gets a pocket knife from a male figure in their life at some point. And I was just like, oh god, I have to like Sam now.
Yeah, no, I know.
And then I was like, oh, damn it.
Yeah. Man, a whole other world where that direction could have went if Sam was their father. But better than the person that ends up being their father. Which when I found out, I was like, oh fuck, that guy. Fuck that guy. Immediately when I thought about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, before we go to him, let's talk about the other father figure. Let's talk about Eddie. Eddie.
Did you take the ring or not?
Take the ring? I don't remember.
On the ferry.
Oh.
In first chapter.
Okay.
On the ferry, Allison's like, hey, Eddie wanted to give you this.
Oh, I think
did you accept it?
I think I did.
Okay.
Only because I didn't understand what it meant.
It totally changes. So I immediately was like, yeah, I immediately took it because I was like, okay, this is super important in their culture. Like the idea of gift giving is super important. Absolutely, I'm going to accept it. My friend I'm playing through did not.
Oh, no.
And I was shocked. And I was like, okay. And his attitude towards Tyler in the second chapter
oh no,
it's totally different if you don't accept the ring.
Wow. Okay. That's crazy. All right. Well.
Yeah.
Overall, I thought it was a hard ass to begin with, and then like everything in the goddamn game, once you peel back those layers, there's definitely some things in there that's just like, oh fuck, Eddie. Especially when he hugs you near the end of Allison's like panic attack. It's just like, here's the thing. Did you tell Eddie that you killed? By the way, spoilers. Turns out that Allison is the one that stabbed her mother and deceivably killed her.
That's the cliffhanger for chapter 1.
Yeah.
And I was like, so when they were at the station in chapter 1 the first time, and Allison asks Tyler if he regretted it, I was like, I think Allison was the one who killed her. And then at the end that, at the end of chapter 1 where you see that play out, I was like, oh my god. And then, obviously later how it comes back with,
you get the third time
seeing how that, the third time you see it, how it comes back. But yeah, I don't think I told Eddie.
You didn't? Okay. I did.
I can't remember which one I chose for my first playthrough.
Sure.
I know I chose both at some point.
Gotcha. But yeah, I love the fact that he's reacted like how everyone would, but then immediately cuts into like, you did what you have to do, or it's you're just in the best interest of your brother, and they just hug it out. Like everything works better when everybody just hugs it out. And this could have been so much trouble could have been handled so long ago. Then again, there was a murder, so something had to be held accountable. Now, nothing's accountable, so you can just say shit. So, but overall, I'm happy, and I wish we ate those waffles. I don't know why we didn't eat those waffles at the beginning of the third chapter, because clearly, I love. Oh, when he brings the waffles to the door, and it's just like, no, I'm not gonna do it. Writes that very sterile note. But no, Eddie, as one of those characters, I thought just grew, especially you understood the fact that he was also taking care of all the stuff at Fireweed too, which I thought was also very nice.
My first impression was like, okay, he's kind of a dick, keeping them separated and, only taking care of Allison. Like, that's pretty shitty. And then you see, okay, he was trying to do what he thought was best for both of them. Well, it wasn't what was best. He was, doing what he thought was going to be right.
Yes.
And then he went out of his way to make sure everything was taken care of for Tyler.
Yeah.
And so he was supporting him in the only way he could.
Sure.
So then I was like, oh, fuck, Eddie, the only good cop. No, that's a lie. D is good too. I loved D. D and Eddie are the only good cops.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. I guess the other major characters in the story is it Tessa?
Tessa and Tom, yeah.
Let's talk about Tessa first. Man,
oh boy,
she was the one character I was like, okay, this is going to be clearly the problematic character. And she is.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. How'd you react to
talk about?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to talk about queer folks and religious trauma much?
Yeah.
Obviously, Tessa was, doing everything she could to support Marianne and the kids and, keeping them fed, and which is really important. And I'm happy she did that, but also don't force your religion on people because you think it's gonna fix their lives, especially queer people. Yeah. But at the end of that second chapter, where Tessa's talking to Tyler about his transition, I was just like, oh, damn, you got me again. I was so prepared to hate.
Yeah.
I was so prepared to hate all of the adults in this town. Yes. And fuck Tom.
All right, we'll go into it.
Tom
fuck
gets
Tom. Tom's the worst.
Tom gets no redemption. But the fact that we get so many adults in this town that I was so prepared to hate. And then, you peel back the layers, you see what was actually going on through an adult perspective and not their kid brain perspective. Yeah. And Tessa's still not my favorite, but she grew. And that's important to recognize.
Yeah, for an adult and religious person like her to have that, not rerelevation, but basically that I don't want to say come to Jesus either. That moment of acceptance.
You can say come to Jesus moment. Because Jesus was the one who was preaching,
Of course.
Treat everybody well, take care of each other.
Yeah, but so
if you want to say she had her come to Jesus moment, I approve.
No, 100%. There's also a detail that you learn, I think, in chapter 3, that the whole reason this is all happening, the reason why she's just totally not helping in any way is because of infidelity with Tom, who turns out to be your dad. Fuck him. He's an asshole.
Fuck that dude. I literally, in my note, in the middle of my chapter 3 notes, I just have all caps Tom and then 3 interrobangs. I was so shocked. I did not see this coming from a mile away. Yeah, I could not believe it. Tom?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, look at him. What?
That fucking sleazeball.
God.
Ugh.
I gotta figure out what his fairy tale version, just so I can be like, oh no, we do know he's the Mad
Hatter.
Yeah, he's the Mad Hunter. Yeah. So like
that one.
Yeah. So yeah, we do know who he is. He's the Mad Hunter, which I'm like, is he though? Like he does stupid shit.
He's mad.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. But I'm like, okay, this is also something I do want to get into. What were your thoughts about this game sort of seemingly introducing supernatural elements, other than obviously the twin telekinesis? Not telekinesis, you know what I'm saying. But then we have sort of this character that's sort of like always watching in the background, and you see this figure, and I'm like wondering if they're gonna if there is some supernatural thing to this world and the fairy tale stuff. Ultimately, we all learn that it's not that. It's just that it's an extension of the world that they're in, and it's extension of people in that world, and sort of being told, especially when you learn. Oh my god! So when you go to the barn. Which, by the way, it's a smart-ass idea to put a loft on top of a barn. That room is terrifying at first.
The design of that room is incredible.
It is incredible, yes.
I spent so much time in the loft. I did all the puzzles, all the optional puzzles.
Yeah.
And just like the aesthetic, the design, the engineering,
which comes all close together when you open the thing and you read her file, her history, and the fact that she has a degree in engineering but wanted to go to visual arts, and she combines it in this weird fucking loft that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so good. And purely from a mechanic standpoint, the puzzle aspects in that room are just so good. You have to reference the stories, you have to look at the dates, you have to put all these pieces together to, do all of these different puzzles. And it's just such a beautiful way to merge, the Book of Goblins and all those stories that, their mother would tell them growing up. And now they have to recall them and put these pieces together to realize that she was, telling them stories about what was actually going on, but in a way that the kids could digest it, which is so beautiful.
Yeah. No, that was the fun. I mean, obviously I understood that was kind of what was happening, but by the time that you get into the loft and then you hear there's just those stories, especially about the story that she tells them, but it's not in the book, which is the papers that they find, which is, you find out that she had a child before them named Leo, which the code on the box is Leo. Oh my god.
My heart. I cannot.
No. And he's buried in the backyard, barely. Which that illustration was so dark and but I love the line later that when you go visit it, both Tyler and Allison are like, we used to play games here. We used to hang out in this area. And I'm like, that's interesting, actually. God.
And it really showed such of a light on, Marianne as a person.
Yes.
And, obviously she was dealing with some severe mental health issues.
Yeah.
And, probably really bad postpartum depression and, being ejected from her family on her own in the middle of nowhere.
Being shunted by the town in some aspect too.
Exactly. And then taken advantage of Tom. Yes. Well, that's not clear. I'm pretty sure there's some definite taking advantage happening.
Yeah, the way he describes it is just like, she was beautiful. And I'm like, ugh.
It does not sound very consensual.
No.
And I'm not, I don't want to put that into their story, but that's the vibes I was getting.
It was not, yeah.
And so,
fuck Tom.
Just
fuck him.
Fuck Tom.
Just terrible.
And so, she was a terrible mother, and definitely those children needed CPS. But she was doing the best she could.
Yeah.
Dealing with all of that trauma.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that it reflects to, I mean, the reason why, and we learn the reason why she's playing with a shotgun, or at least in my, okay, this, I guess, goes to your interpretation of what the ending is. You do learn all this about, the mother, Marianne, but there's also that book in her room, if I'm not mistaken, is about trying to understand her child. Am I correct? Or is it the reverse?
Yeah, it's something about understanding your trans child or something like that.
Yes, which is opposite, obviously, to the stuff that she got from Tessa, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a chance that she was was a parent that was willing, but then again, it's all based on perspective on how they're hearing. Because I know that Tyler feels one way, but Allison feels another. So, in one of the respects to the end, is that she's obviously all distressed with the potentially having mental health problems. There's a part where there's a chance that she might lose her kids, and that is upsetting her because she lost already.
There's a huge chance that Tessa threatened to called protective services about her children. That just happened. She comes back to the house. Little Tyler, who goes by Ollie at the time, which they've made very clear is not the birth name, but just the name he had chosen at the time.
Yeah.
So finds out about the leaflet from Tessa, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
And gets really upset.
Yeah.
And so, and depending on your interpretation of the ending, you see that Marianne had mental health problems.
Yes.
But you've also seen Allison with her anxiety and her panic attacks. And depending on how you choose to see the ending, Allison could be seeing something happening that's not actually what's happening.
Sure.
And that influences both of their, perception of what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the ending, I chose the ending where she didn't have the gun.
Got it. Oh, she always has the gun, right?
Or she wasn't.
She wasn't pointing it at Tyler.
She wasn't pointing it at Tyler.
Yes. She was gonna, and I believe in my interpretation too, is that that gun was not meant for Tyler. That gun was meant for
It was
Marianne.
meant for Tom.
Oh, I thought it was Marianne.
Oh, you thought it was for Marianne?
The reason is because why would she have all that stuff in the loft? It was the secret that they needed to be unlocked by them. So, in my interpretation,
interesting.
My interpretation, yes, the gun was meant for Tom when Tom showed up the first time, but the second, but she loaded it because I think she might have done it for herself, and she left this breadcrumb trail so that the kids would then learn about, Leo. That's just my interpretation, because why would you do that? Interesting. But then again, I mean, the kids are. Well, but I think it's because she was on her last straw. Not so much that she knew that the kids would be taken care of in some aspects, but just that's just in my interpretation of what happened. Because why would she still have the gun? I think the Tom thing happened because I'm trying to remember. Wait.
So the Tom thing happened earlier.
It happened earlier. Okay.
And so my interpretation of the ending was that young Allison was seeing that interaction.
Got it.
And it influenced her perception of what was happening on the dock.
Sure.
Because she was seeing,
Tyler,
Marianne going after Tom with the gun.
Interesting. I didn't even think of that. Okay.
But Tyler was there, and so Allison was seeing Marianne go after Tyler instead of Tom.
Oh, got it.
That's how I saw it. So I saw that Allison was seeing something that wasn't there.
Sure.
And that because of their powers impacted how they were both seeing what was happening in that situation.
I can 100% see that. I think that the reason why I'm choosing between my interpretation and what I saw, because when I was playing the game and it gives you the choice, you look left or you look right, and in both instances, what am I trying to say? Well, Tyler has to be there, right? So the truth is Tyler always is on the dock, but is the gun being pointed at Tyler? Or is the gun being pointed at Tom? Right? That's
gosh.
Because how's
I
Tyler
should have replayed the ending.
No, I know. It's only because, and I think it's because in Tom's okay, so we also see it through Tom's perspective, which he's slunking outside their house. She has the gun like ready, locked and loaded, and then I don't know if like I'm trying to remember the beginning of the game too when Tyler's being chased by his mother, seemingly. But Tyler runs out onto the dock, and Tom sees that. So Tom sees Tyler on the dock with the mom with the gun, but not necessarily pointing at him. It is sort of a, how are you doing? Like, sort of like, and then the daughter comes and stabs. So again, who's to say? There's 3 different interpretations of the story as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I mean, you get to choose. You get to choose to believe if like she's aiming it at Tyler, which I choose in my heart. I choose not to believe that she's actually aiming it at Tyler. From all the evidence that we sort of gained throughout the game, that's my interpretation of it. My interpretation, it was just a complete misunderstanding. And
yeah, because I chose to. Okay, because the choice is between whether you believe your memory or Tom's memory, right?
No, it's between Allison and Tom's. The reason is because they also confront Tom and say, "Why didn't you help her from drowning?" So he was there. So then Tyler had to be there. And also Allison. Yeah. So I think, so the choice is she aiming at Tyler or not? I think that is the real choice. That's the choice that you have to make. But the ending is, she gets stabbed regardless.
I chose to believe that she was not aiming at Tyler.
Yes.
But from how I saw that ending, I saw it as Allison seeing things. No, that's how I interpreted it. Too.
Yeah. I can believe that. No, that you saying that actually is like, that totally makes sense. So honestly, it could be all 3 of these things. But yeah. That's crazy.
And this is why I love Dontnod games. It's because everybody's gonna have a different answer for you know what the right ending was supposed to be, right?
Specifically this one too. I think this one's probably the strongest interpretations of that. Specifically because if you play like, okay, Life is Strange, right? Life is Strange, you have same thing, 2 choices. But really, they really want you to pick one. They don't really want you to pick the other because they believe the reason is because they have a music video for one of them. They don't have a music video for the other one. So that's why I believe one of those is right. But this one though, it's like, I think you can go either way. And the fact that, it could be either Tyler goes and close the house up, or I guess Allison stays, or whatever it ends up being. But this game's fantastic. Any final thoughts on this? So we can, because we're gonna have to talk about Twin Mirror.
Right. Yeah. No, I just love everything about this game. I think. Tell me why took the best parts of all the other Dontnod games. They took excellent story and they really improved on the gameplay and mechanics. And I think having an ending that actually felt really consequential was so beautiful and so well done. And I just, again, I love this game so much. And I think they did really well with, all of the pieces.
Yeah. And I think they also wrapped it up pretty well because Tom loses his race and Tessa leaves his ass. So I'm all about that.
Fuck Tom.
Fuck Tom. Yeah, fantastic game. Please, everyone, play it. It's on Game Pass. I got to play it on Xbox.
You haven't played it at this one.
I played it on 3 platforms. I played it on my original Xbox One. I played it on Game Pass, and I just finished it off of Series S, which, by the way, looked gorgeous. It looked so good. And we're going to talk about another game that I think that looks pretty good as well. Let's go ahead and move on to Twin Mirror.
None of my bed don't weigh the same.
Basswood is many things. Peaceful tops that list.
Change my clothes and walk.
Until that day.
You're the one in the driver's seat, Sam. I can't make you do anything.
Coming back to Basswood was your idea.
Just try and make sure you don't do anything stupid.
I know you think that the only thing waiting for you down there is hurt. You might be right.
All
All right. So you reviewed this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to take over the lead for talking about this game?
Yeah, let me take the lead for this one. So this is Dontnod's last game that they released. This is actually one of the ones that they, I believe, published with Konami. If I'm not Konami. I'm sorry. Oh my god, Banco. Oh my god.
And Namco.
Bandai Namco. Yeah, so they did it with Bandai Namco, and the reason is because Pac-Man's everywhere. Pac-Man's all over this game. And I gotta send you the doc that they gave me originally, because it was like what you can and can't talk about in the preview, and it was don't talk about Pac-Man. I'm like, all right, fine, I won't talk about Pac-Man. Okay, but basically, yes, it is their latest game. It is their game where they're finally like no longer with Square Enix at this point. They're working on with a totally different publisher, and so this is their first attempt of like a full game that came out. It came out in December 2nd, I believe, because I believe that's when my review went up. I ended up doing the preview, and I ended up doing the review. And when I did the preview, I got the first 2 chapters before you find the body, before you find the first body, so you'll know where that is. I think that's exactly where I am. So the game sort of peters from there. But basically, when I did the preview and I was excited about the game, I thought that this was like the starting of some early Christopher Nolan films that I was starting to watch around this time, because I watch a lot of Kind of Funny content, and In Review was doing Christopher Nolan, and they did The Following, Memento, and all the like the crime ones, like all the like Meteor, like Insomnia, like all those ones. And I was in that mood, I was in that mindset. So I remember writing, I think the title of the preview is the Christopher Nolan video game that we're waiting for, only because I was basing it off of my feelings and what it was doing for me for that. Cut to then my review. Before I get to my review, Dontnod actually used that in one of their ads. So I actually do have a still of just, Christopher Nolan game I'm waiting for by DualShockers. And I'm like, cool. All right. I hope I like this game. And then cut to the review. And while there are elements of this game that I do enjoy, I do think it's one of the prettiest Dontnod games out there. Now, next to Tell Me Why, and this is just spectacular in terms of what they look like, especially when you get to like the mirror mechanic world that happens throughout the game. But overall, I think I was left unsatisfied by the story and the mystery and the sort of nature of what was going on. And in terms of the strength of the characters as well, I just didn't find them as interesting nor compelling. You also don't spend a whole lot of time with a lot of people. You're just sort of like in and out really fast. You kind of like get to learn everybody at a funeral, and then you're supposed to remember that in the later half when you see some other people later. But yeah, that's my general thoughts, is that it's just a game that just sort of happens. The ending to me is just not as crazy consequential for what it is. But do you want to try and do what you did to me, which was recap what the story is, or tell what is the baseline?
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you start off and you're going to a funeral because your best friend died, who you haven't talked to for 2 years, because you wrote an expose piece about, unsafe working conditions in the local mine, which ended up leading to the mine closing. And this is a big mining town, and so basically half the town lost their jobs, are out of work, can't find more work. It's like you get the feel that this town that relies on this one sort of income, and now that's gone, and a lot of people are desperate, and so you get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
But now you're coming back for this funeral and dealing with the consequences of leaving everybody you know and love on a whim. And so it goes through, you're at this funeral of your best friend, and his child is like, I feel like something sketchy's going on here. And so you're like, okay, I guess we can kind of look into this. And so you're like going through all the facts of what happened with your best friend, and things aren't adding up. And so you are kind of following this trail of crumbs left by his work, trying to figure out what his latest story is. And so you find a body, you find some sketchy people, and really you're just trying to figure out, what's going on in this town and who's involved. And it ends with you realizing that there is a drug ring that's taken over the town, and one of the head cops is involved in it and dealing with the outfall of that.
Yeah. That's about it, to be honest. Like that's what happens.
Yeah. I think I am much more positive on this game than you were. And I think the biggest part of that is we had wildly different expectations going
100%. 100% we have wildly different expectations.
My expectations were based on your review, which was pretty negative.
Yeah.
From what I remember you saying, the mechanics are cool, the story's kind of lackluster, it's just kind of there. And so I went into it going like, okay, Dontnod aren't known for, being the most amazing games. Like they're not masterpieces. You're not looking for a perfect story, perfect mechanics, right? So I'm just like, all right, okay, whatever. And I'll say I really enjoyed it. I won't say it's a great game, but it was a good game. I feel like it was solid.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that this is one of the games you definitely get on sale. Because this was originally a $60 release, if I'm not mistaken, and you could beat the game in 4 hours. That does not dictate if it's worth $60. It's just that I think that
in 4 hours.
No, it's like not even 4 hours. But like the
I took much longer.
Well, you know why? You know why though? Is because I beat it. I did the preview, right? So that's like a quarter chunk of the game. So I sped through that shit because I beat it twice.
That's fair.
I beat it twice to make sure, or the beginning part twice, so I could like get both angles of it. And then so I got through that so fast. So then by the time that like I got to the later half, which isn't the most craziest thing, the only part that took the most time was the camp that you go to. Me trying to figure out that camp was a kind of a pain in the ass, but other than that, I think it is kind of a breeze once you kind of like know exactly what to do. Overall, I think that my expectations were definitely exceedingly high because I did play Tell Me Why before this, before I played the game, and I played chapter 1 and 2. I was like, oh man, this story's freaking interesting and cool, and the characters are actually fundamentally realistic and awesome. And then you get to Twin Mirror, where everyone is just sort of their like typical like town personality, right? You have the dipshit guy that's like mad at you for the thing that you done. You have like the old crazy lady that works at the the counter at the medical store. Everyone just sort of like fits in their roles. There's the junkie on the ground. There's the man in the wheelchair that is just so happens to be Wizen, and you learn history from him throughout something. But anyways, everyone was just sort of just standard. And as someone who, by the way, it ain't a Dontnod game if it's a small town with someone with a special ability doing something at the end of it. It's not a Dontnod unless she does that.
Yeah.
Which everything comes back to Twin Peaks, because Twin Peaks is just like this. And so I had that expectation of like an interesting town that, you need to go to. And while I knew it wasn't going to be the heights of that, but at the same time, I just think that some of the characters were just kind of there just to be there. Like there's a character that you meet at the bar that is the bar owner, and I think you don't see that person until the very end of the game after one additional scene in the beginning. You
meet him at the wake, and then the morning after.
The morning after, if you decide
there's
to.
There's the chance to meet him again.
Yes, there's a chance to meet him, but then that's it, and then he's gone. You hear him talk about his sister once. You just so happen to bump into his sister. You see her that one time. You never see her again. You bump into. I'm trying to remember what the love interest was in the game.
Anna?
I think Anna. Let's just say Anna. Her father, you meet him twice, and then he's gone for the rest of the game. Like, there's just people that come and go, and not that I thought that this movie would, like, because it's a movie about suspects, and I felt like half of the suspects just disappear throughout the whole movie that I didn't even consider them anymore. So the fact that they weren't reoccurring in any way, the only person that ends up being the guy who's reoccurring is a guy that also I'm like, oh, it just so randomly to be him. You know, like I didn't necessarily think it was, I don't know. I just did not just find the structure of the story anyway compelling, especially since you also have, okay, the other big thing is your special ability is you have kind of two. You can recreate scenarios by being in the area and sort of like taking pieces and then like reconstructing the crime scenes. You also can relive memories and like sort of like visualize them in this like memory world that you have. And then also you have a doppelganger buddy who is sort of like the more sophisticated, like there's the two dichotomies of this game. It's like either
so it's the analytical side or the social side.
Yes.
And so the Mind Palace represents your analytical side.
Yes.
And him, the like manifestation of your psychosis, is the social side.
That's right.
And so when I was going into this story, I wasn't expecting it to be like a mystery game at all. That's not what I was looking out to get out of this game.
Sure.
And I think that's really where our perspectives on the story differ.
Sure.
Is you were looking for like this hard-hitting investigative crime journalist to come in here and solve the mystery.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, you're a dude who his life sucks and his best friend just died and you're kind of just coasting through life. Yeah. And I guess I have to figure out what the hell happened here again in a town where everybody hates me.
No, totally.
And so I was like, my perspective on the story was through the eyes of Sam being kind of apathetic about what's going on.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. My thing is when you wake up in your hotel room at the very beginning, we're going to start talking about spoilers in the game. You wake up in the hotel room. This is after a long night of drinking, even though you know you took some pills. You take some pills in the car, or at least they're forced to, and then you go drinking at the wake. You wake up the next morning, and then you find a shirt that's just covered in blood, or your shirt is covered in blood. So this is the reason why I connected it also to crime movies like, so for instance, Christopher Nolan. Like the movie that I just watched around that time was a movie called Insomnia. Insomnia is about a detective that is brought into a small town called Night Mute, which I stole that from a company I'm building, where basically the sunlight never goes away. It's always daylight. And so he can't sleep. And so he starts making irrational decisions. And there's a scene in the movie where I'm going to spoil the movie, sorry. He is chasing down the bad guy. He's with his partner. It's foggy. He's so impaired that he sees somebody, immediately thinks it's the bad guy, shoots him, turns out it's his partner. He actually commits a murder, and the murderer sees it. And then the murderer, the whole movie's about trying to like get past the fact that he murdered his partner while trying to stop the other murderer. In my mind, when I thought I was setting up with this movie was, okay, what's going on with the bloody shirt? Hold on, my phone, Google just went off of my phone. Like, what's up with this bloody shirt? Who is this double? Because at this point, I wasn't really understanding what that other manifestation was. And then you even go through this weird, and we talked about this before. The one thing that happens in the game that never comes back later is this running montage of you running down the hallway. It comes back in different aspects, but not the same. But like
the idea is reoccurring, but the actual mechanic is not.
And it sucks.
So my first playthrough of this game took a lot longer because I was going through it and I was like, I'm going to want to get the trophies in this, right? And so I looked up like which ones like aren't story related, which ones can I miss?
Sure.
And so most of it's like going through things without help, figuring things out without help. And so the first time I went through that hallway scene, you have to get through it without failing at all. And I don't have the best mobility, fine motor skills at all, and the controls in that hallway were so bad. It just felt so not responsive, and I just was like trying so hard to get through this hallway, and it was so incredibly frustrating that I was just like, I can't put up with this. I finally like managed to do it. But like that took me so long and really put me off to like the whole game at that point.
Sure.
And
Sure.
like if this comes back, I'm not gonna enjoy this game.
Got it.
Spoiler alert, it didn't come back.
No, it comes back in other ways that are totally different every time, and I thought was inconsistent, but sure. Okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, that whole like unsuringness of like, did I kill someone? What happened? And then not fully understanding who the other was, or the doppelganger, I forgot what they refer him to. But basically, I'm just like, is he doing this? Like, is this like a Patrick Bateman situation? Like, what's going on here? And then you learn really quickly, like, nope, you didn't murder that person. You're totally in the clear. And then you sort of learn like, he's there, but I just don't think he necessarily had to be there, other than the fact that your character is just so analytical about everything. Like, not even like that is his character trait, which you kind of do learn later through a very quick cutscene that he is also possibly a child that may have I'm trying to remember what is said in that scene. It's the scene where you're a child and you can hear your parents.
You're overhearing your parents. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're talking about a disability, I think.
So, yeah, I think the character of Sam Higgs, which is who you play as, is so nuanced that, like, after playing through it a couple times, I'm like, oh, wow, I really get this character.
Sure.
But the first time you play through, you really don't understand him or connect with him. He's... you can play it super analytical or you can play it super social and see like the difference between, how your choices affect those around you. But the character doesn't really notice that. And so, you can feel like, oh, I'm just going to ignore this dude that's following me around that nobody else can see and just make all the analytical choices. And that feels in line with the character. Or you can just like inherently trust him and follow that. And I think the game doesn't really do a good job of setting up who Sam is until the end, until he's kind of like, experiencing the psychosis so intensely. He has that like psychotic break. He's in that mind palace, and you're going back, through his childhood. You see that like they represent his parents as, one's trying to be caring and get him support and help, and one being more strict, being like, no, like he doesn't need help, he's perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with him, when obviously, there's some, mental health issues going on there.
Yeah.
And I just like the character of Sam Higgs, I think could have been presented in such a better way.
Yeah.
And that's why like I like the game, I'm like, I like it, I enjoyed it, but it could have been so much better.
Yeah.
If you get a little bit more hints to that are a little bit more obvious, because I don't think most players picked up on all the information that's presented to you, because it's done so subtly.
Yeah.
And you get those little hints of like, oh, okay, following my instincts, like super like analytical, figure out what's happening, or trusting this like, other part of myself that's outside of me. And I just, I think they could have presented that so much better.
Yeah, because to me, it felt like they were trying to comment on something specifically about Sam and his mental health, and I didn't think that they couldn't stick the landing in any direction. Specifically, as well as when you get to later in the game, when you beat the game, basically you get there's like 3 major choices, and honestly, they're all kind of shit for the most part because
there's 4 total endings.
Yeah, there's 4 total endings. None of them are like
one.
perfect.
I feel very strongly that 1 is the correct answer.
Sure.
So because you have either you So either you get to figure out who actually was leading the drug ring, or you don't. And then for each of those choices, Anna either lives or dies.
Yeah.
And so, personally, I think the best ending is you choose analytical. You let him go. You choose the Mind Palace. And so, you figure out that, oh God, what's his name? The pharmacist was, the mastermind.
Yeah. The guy who's new to the town. That was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Anna live. I think from like a mystery aspect, this game just does not hit it. Like, you find Dennis dead. And you're like, okay, Nick's dead, Dennis is dead. We have to figure out what happened to Dennis. We have to figure out what happened to Nick. We have to put it all together. We have to go, follow Nick's leads, talk to the people at the camp to figure out what they know.
But in whatever United States, it's like all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's this multiple states, exploration. I think if you had started the story with Nick, I think the game would have had so much more impact. Because I feel like all the breadcrumbs we get of what Nick was doing would make for a really interesting mystery game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And I think they focus so much on the actual mechanics and gameplay that you lost out a little bit on the story there.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, besides that goddamn hallway scene, the first one, the rest of the mechanics I thought were really well done and really cool and really enhanced the gameplay. But the story just did not hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Did you go through all the different aspects of the game?
Through the different endings, you mean?
With the choices between the analytical and the socials.
I almost have all of them. I'm missing one of them that I decided because the way that the one thing I don't like about the way they have it set up the save system, if I'm not mistaken, is that you can pick a chapter, but then you have to pick on and then play the whole game from that chapter. That was the one thing that I was like, I didn't want to do that because I was so close to completing other trophies. So I haven't done exactly everything, but I've done enough to see left and right, to the point where, I mean, I at the end of the day, even if you make those left and right choices, they kind of don't matter until the final one. The final one, which is at the top of that waterfall, which by the way is the prettiest part of the game, is when you just finished that maze stuff.
Walking
up that. Oh my God, that was Inception level cool, that Christopher Nolan shit. I'm just like, this is incredible looking. So that, and then you sitting there in the chair. That is to me that is the only major decision that you're really working towards, because then the game goes left or right, or depending on whatever you decide to choose between dialogue at that point. So yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I felt like out of all the games that are decision based, and I know that it's never perfect. There's usually, they all lead somewhere to the same ending or whatever, but I still feel like I gained something. I'm not sure if I gained anything by picking other choices if I played this game. I know that you might have a different opinion on that.
I think it really changed your relationship with characters. And I think so that was a huge argument in Life is Strange game. The ending made all of your other choices mean nothing.
Sure.
But in Twin Mirror, you see every time you have to make that like one or the other choice, it completely changes an interaction with the character. So like the first choice with Bug, it completely changes where Kathy is during that fight, if she's at the bar or if she goes home.
Got it.
And then like the choice in the shack, if you tell Bug what's going on, she doesn't run away, and if you threaten to call her mom, she'll run away, and that changes, your interactions with Kathy in the end scene. And I think that one of the things they did really well was seeing how those options where you have to pick one or the other, it really does change like how the story plays out.
Sure.
One of the things I was most disappointed by was that there's a trophy for doing it all analytical or all social, because I think that really ruins the beauty of this game.
Sure.
And if you just play through it, trusting your gut with your dialogue options, it really shapes that narrative in a way that's really interesting and really cool that you miss out on if you just go one direction the whole way through and feel like, oh, I have to stick to this because I'm trying to get that trophy.
Yeah.
I feel like that really detracted from the narrative.
Yeah, and that's how I played it the first time I went around. I did both sides, or at least I went whatever I felt was right at that moment. Because at the time I don't think it's never really explicitly clear in the beginning that your choices are analytical and social, in my opinion. But but midway through the game, you're like, okay, I understand what you're making me do now. So that's why I would go left or right. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I just think that overall with the narrative that you're being told, if it was just a little bit stronger, and if I cared just a little bit more about the people, I think that I would be more high in this game. But I'm still just sort of just like, it's definitely out of the ones that I've played. And I played enough Dontnod games, just not enough. I still have to play Life is Strange 2. I still haven't played that one yet. But this is still, I think, at the bottom if I had to, take a stab at it. But,
yeah, I think the first time I played through it, I was at the bottom, but after playing through it a couple more times, I'm much higher on the game, which doesn't really speak well to it. That, I had to play through it like 3 times to be like, okay, yeah, I really enjoyed this game. Yeah. And I feel like it was a game designed to be played at least 3 times.
Yeah.
And the fact that you cannot skip through cutscenes
no.
at all, because you can't, have multiple saves, it makes that really frustrating and really, you really have to commit to it. But I just, I really love the world. I really hope they revisit this area of their Dontnod universe in another game.
Sure.
I doubt they will, but I really want to see more, because I saw just enough to kind of, get excited about this world and these characters, and I really want to see more. They just didn't give that to me.
Sure. Yeah. I agree. I think.
How do you feel about? I have to know. How do you feel about Anna and Nick getting together?
I mean, I wish I felt strongly towards Nick. I don't get enough. I mean, you don't get enough. He dies at the beginning of the game. Little pieces that you do get is some of the memory stuff early on. Ultimately, I it's funny because I definitely have seen that story before. I mean, it happens in so many narratives. Like, hell, even Superman Returns has that, where Lois Lane is like dating a totally other dude, and Clark Kent comes back is like, okay, guess I missed my boat. So ultimately, it is interesting that they were so close, but then so disconnected, because and then immediately like fell in love with, I don't know. I feel like they are both. I don't want to say what like trauma bond, the fact that their friend just left and wrecked shop.
Absolutely.
And then that's what brought them together. Like that's what I felt like what it was. Is like
I'm so glad you agree.
Yeah, I felt like the reason why they're together is because of fucking
I was like, absolutely, like, Sam just proposed to Anna. She turned him down, and he has the story break that goes over really poorly. He just up and left, and Nick just lost his best friend, and Anna just lost her boyfriend, and they were all great friends, and then all of a sudden they get together, and I'm like, that's a trauma bond if I've ever seen one.
He just blew the doors off of that town and like escaped in the middle of the night. And I feel like that's the reason why they came together in the first place. So ultimately the whole game is Sam's fault. That's my
absolutely. And I think that's why I liked it, was you're playing as this character who's so deeply flawed and so deeply fucks up, and you have to like go through and relive like the worst parts of your life.
Sure.
And deal with the consequences. And I think that is such an important story to be told. They just didn't do it in the best way possible.
Yeah.
They didn't like set it up for you to really connect to that emotional state of, dealing with your trauma and going through, the worst mistakes of your life. You have to have a connection to be able to feel and empathize with the character you're playing as. And they just didn't give you that connection.
No, they didn't. And I felt like some of the parts are disparate of each other, but they're just there just to be there. Like, for instance, there's the town, but then there's also this like refuge thing that they mention that is really just there so that way you can meet one specific person to tell you some information, which is the information you need. And it happens so fast and so quick. So it's just like, just left a not a bad taste in my mouth, but like a nothing taste in my mouth. So that's why I felt like I just like, the pieces weren't there in this broken mirror, in my opinion. I don't know. I think we pretty much wrap it up. What was your final thoughts on Twin Mirror? Like, what is the last remnants of this thing? Is this the game you platinumed? Are you actually beat everything in the game?
Yeah, I platinumed it. It was not hard. Basically, you had to all of the like mechanic gameplay situations where you're like running through the hallway or finding him in the crowd of people, or like that conversation with Anna at the house. You have to go through those without any assistance from him, and then you have to play through both, going through all the analytical options and the social options, and then get all 4 endings. And that's basically it.
Yeah. I'm close.
So
I think I'm like a couple more left.
Yeah, after doing all of that, after getting the platinum, I feel like they did not set up the choices as being as impactful on the story as they turned out to be, and it can feel easily missable, like those choices aren't making an impact. And like they really do, you just don't see it if you're not looking for it. I feel like they didn't set up the game to have you care about the characters at all. You don't feel that connection, and that really detracts from you're spending the whole game trying to care about the character you're playing as, which takes away from the story. And the mystery aspect is just kind of sort of there for you to go through and process your trauma, and doesn't really serve as being a mystery.
No.
With all of that being said, I really enjoyed the game. I think the character, by the end of all my playthroughs, I have a connection to now, and now I care about him and his story and his experiences, but it took me too long and too many playthroughs to get there to say this is a great game.
Fair enough.
Overall, I don't know. I like the character, and I care about the character, and I wish we saw more and cared about him sooner.
That is fair. For me, I would say that this was a game that I had high expectations. I mean, I just felt like they were knocking it out of the park left and right with the previous games that they have done with the Life is Strange series and with Tell Me Why, that this was the first one that I felt like I was not feeling a connection as the game was going along. And that sucked. And then obviously the and I will fully admit the expectations I brought onto it were pretty high. When you mention Christopher Nolan's name, you're asking for trouble. Yeah. But hey, I got a thing on the internet for us. I'm okay with that. I should get that printed and put it in my room. But otherwise, yeah, I think that if you are in the mood for a just sort of like analytical detective story, I think you can't go wrong. I mean, there's not many of these. The closest thing you get to this is probably like Heavy Rain. Heavy Rain, which of course is a longer game, an older game. So do that as what you will. So I think that the fact that this even exists, I just think is awesome. I will say when it first came out, it was $60. It's probably way cheaper now. So you might be able to find a deal on it.
I got it on sale. I think I got it for $30.
Yeah. See, that's half off right there. So
yeah,
that's solid. Or if this eventually, I can see this being a PlayStation Plus now or a Xbox Game Pass game too down the road if it ever.
I think this would be a great PlayStation Plus game.
Yeah, it's perfect for that.
For sure.
So, if you are feeling that you need to fill the void out of the endless amount of games that are coming out, hey, maybe give this a shot. But if I had to choose between Tell Me Why and Twin Mirror, I would 100% recommend Tell Me Why 1,000 times over. Just thought it was just a more told story and characters that are going to live with me, for a long, long time. So that's my true opinion on Twin Mirror. And if you want to hear the rest of those thoughts, go to DualShockers and just find that review I did, because I'm still proud of it. I have to see if it's still there. I haven't checked.
It is. I've been looking at it while we're recording this. I've been
that's awesome.
glancing over it. So. That's
funny. Shout out to Lou Caldonati and Ryan Melter for editing that sucker, because I've not the greatest writer. So thank you to them. But yeah, I think that is going to probably wrap up our little discussion here between the Dontnod games that we got to play recently. And this has been a lot of fun. I hope we do more of these down the road. If we do some more, we should do like PiP book club, or we do little book clubs like that. That'd be kind of cool. About movies, TV shows, whatever. But yeah, this has been fun. Do you have any final thoughts, or if anything, go ahead and plug your way?
Dontnod games are great. I like fun stories. They tell fun stories. And obviously Tell Me Why is probably gonna be my favorite game for a long, long, long time. But with that said, thank you so much for sticking out with us through this very lengthy, in-depth discussion as we gush about Dontnod games. I have been Sly. You can find me everywhere on the internet at SlyCloneMC. I have some projects coming up, including one of my classes involves me doing a live news broadcast for the next couple weeks. So you can find more information about that on my Twitter. I think that's all I have going on in my life right now. What have you got to plug right now, Mario?
Well, I finally announced that I am working on a solo project with guests that I'll be doing called the Halo. It's called Halo Forever. That's the project. I get to play every level of Halo with a new guest that either has a history with Halo or not. So I'm very excited when I get to Fiona's, because Fiona has no history, and I decided that she's the last level of the game. So this is gonna be really funny. So spoil that. Yeah, everyone gets a little tease for that. No one else. I haven't said that anywhere else, so I'm teasing it here. So definitely check me out there at my YouTube channel at youtube.com/thatmarivera. But of course, you can find both of us at youtube.com/pointinprogress, where we talk about video games while oh my god, I messed it up. I'm still thinking critically about them. But of course, I want to say thank you for bringing this as an idea. I think this was a swell idea. So again, thank you.
Then a great conversation. I really hope we do more sit-down chats like this in the future. It's been super great. Thank you all for supporting us and letting this be a possibility. It has been so great. And as we say at the end of all of our podcasts and videos, progress has been made.